Welcome to the Open to Hope show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
This show is brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation and the Compassionate Friend.
We're doing a show called Dealing with Grief Through Art. We're going to talk to Nancy Gershman and Debla Heredia-Brown. And Nancy is a memory artist, and she created a dreamscape for Debla.
Well, let's get started with our friend Nancy. Let's talk about your work and the beginning. Now, we have a picture of you and your dad. Talk about Dad.
That's very sweet. We were on the Esplanade on the Upper East Side, and we just did our first selfie. That's what the picture is.
Wow. Oh, I love that.
I want to show this sleigh picture.
Jane, I met actually by phone only.
Wow.
What happened was the bereavement counselor told me that she was really being triggered by packing up her mother's things. Her mother had already passed. And Jane was a photographer. So what I did was I introduced myself and I said that my whole sole purpose is to make a picture of a memory, either that you have or you wish you had. And that we could create this with existing photographs. And the first thing I want to do is I want to know, I want her to start thinking from her mother's point of view. Her mother's name was Sylvia. I want to know what was Sylvia's, what was the place where she felt most alive. And she really loved her home in Englewood, where she brought up her children. And so I just very simply said, can you put your hands on a photograph of that house?
And so there is a picture of the house.
Well, the house is there. Jane is there herself.
Yeah.
But
she's there, but is it a snowman?
well,
behind
that's
her?
not a snowman. So what happened was, you know, she was very, very troubled by the loss. Every time I would even mention her mother's name, you know, she would break down and cry. But I learned miraculously that while Jane was a photographer, her mother was an abstract sculptress. And I said, please, you know, on our next phone call, I'd like to see some of these photographs of sculptures. Just send them to me. And one of them was of this sort of friendly fellow, you know, who had this flipper that kind of looked like it was waving hello. But she got very sad when she saw that sculpture, and she saw it originally as a sculpture that was waving goodbye, that it was Sylvia saying goodbye. But then she realized that she could make herself feel differently, and she could look at it as Sylvia saying, you're going to be okay, and you know, I'm wishing you well. And that was really a cathartic moment for her, where she realized that she could shift perspectives on and off like that. Now, why is her mother in a sled? Because she had this very fleeting thought in hospice, right when she declined putting her mother on a breathing machine, and she said, "Please, please, Santa, if you would, you know, just go on your rounds and then come back and wait for my mother and take her up in the sled."
Wow.
Why did she say that? She's Jewish, you know, an atheist. But her mother, you know, and Jane loved Christmas time. It was a happy time for them.
Let's talk about how, Debla, how you met Nancy and what it meant to you. Where was your dad?
My dad was in hospice, and I recall that day, like if it was just yesterday, Nancy walked into the room and she introduced herself to us and spoke about her dreamscape and what it meant for a lot of people, how we could introduce either his memories or maybe, you know, having him in a vacation he always wanted to take. And as she's talking to me, I'm thinking, wow, what a magnificent way to transcend this morning that, you know, we were all really depressed at that time, and turn it around. My father was blind at an early age in Cuba. He at about 18 or maybe before that. My father grew up in the southern part of Cuba, but he attended the University of Havana, where Castro and him both graduated in 1950.
Wow.
My father, as a blind man, became a lawyer by memory. Wow. He also played chess. He was a mentor to the whole family.
It sounds like
he
it.
was a leader in his own right and an overachiever.
Yeah.
So the stamp, the way we saw it as a united family, and our communications with Nancy was like, let's bring together all his major achievements, and that's what the commemorative
And so you have him there on the stamp. How did you decide to do a postage stamp? I love that.
It was an accident because
it evolved.
Yeah, it evolved because so first we had this picture of him just sitting on a couch. And then we wanted to bring in his chess making and also his national his nationalism with the flag. During your period of mourning, you also submitted this stamp to the post to the United States Post Office for Hispanic Heritage Month.
That's a poem from Jose Marti, who's a famous publisher, famous. He was involved in politics and everything, and it was like "Hacer es la mejor manera de decir," which basically means actions speak louder than words.
Wow.
And my father, how he lived his life.
I have a website
Give us
called
your website.
Art for Your Sake. SAKE, Saki, and .com. Yeah, that's the best way.
Now, how do you get started? Do you have a lot of people send you photographs, or what do you do?
It always starts with a conversation.
Okay.
Yes, because how else will we know what photographs to use until we find out what the preferred story is?
The preferred story.
Yeah.
Expand on that
Well,
a
that
little
actually
bit.
comes from narrative therapy. Maybe you
Love
can
it.
even describe what narrative therapy is, but the idea is that I am actually acting as a catalyst and working with someone who is probably so distressed at that moment that they wouldn't even know what their preferred story is, and I'm just helping them figure out what would be the perfect prescription, in a sense, for their grief. In your case, it was more of a legacy piece. For Jane, it was more of a wish fulfillment.
That's interesting.
And also, it gave her confidence in her own ability to heal herself. It's a conversation starter.
Yes, and it's passing down a piece of history to the next generation or to people that didn't know him.
We want to thank you for watching the show today, and as Heidi, I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours till you find your own, and come and visit us at opentohope.com. God bless.